Well, good morning and Shabbat Shalom and welcome. I'm Rabbi Ed Feinstein, and this is Valley Beth Shalom Torah Study for a Shabbos morning, joined this morning, as always, by my dear friend and teacher, Rabbi Marc Gellman. Marc, good morning. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, my friend.
Very good to have you here to study together.
I feel the same way.
We are reaching now toward the end of the book of Exodus.
Yes.
The first section of the book of Exodus is the story of our enslavement and liberation from Egypt, which is the master story of the Jewish people, culminating in the crossing of the Red Sea, which is the master event in which the windows that look out onto history are open, and we can see that there is a God in history, that there is a possibility of history, the possibility that freedom, that justice, that human dignity can actually triumph in this world. I think that's a hope and a faith that's necessary in every generation. And then in the core of the book of Exodus, we have the two parshiot that deal with revelation. Yitro, which deals with the Ten Commandments, the moment at Mount Sinai, and Mishpatim that we did last week. This whole long series of laws, which structure a new vision of human society and a new vision for what being a human being is all about. And now we reach the end of the parsha, 5 parshiot, the end of the book, 5 parshiot, which deal with the construction of the Mishkan. What God demands Moses to do is to build a portable Mount Sinai. See, Mount Sinai itself never became a holy place. It was holy when God was there, and it was holy when God was speaking to us. But the moment that God departs, it just becomes another schleppy mountain in the middle of the desert, which is why, incidentally, in 1979, when Menachem Begin proposed giving it back to the Egyptians, nobody stood up and protested. For all of the sense that we have that the city of Jerusalem is sacred, how come nobody stood up and said, how can you give Mount Sinai away? Because it's not a holy mountain. It was the site of a holy event, but it's not a holy mountain. And the reason why it's not a holy mountain is because we are commanded to bring it with us, to build a Mishkan, to build a tabernacle, whatever that word means, to build a shrine, a meeting place, Ohel Moed, a meeting place where we get to meet divinity in our world, where divinity goes with us into our world. And this week's Torah portion and next week's, Moses asks for contributions from the people. He appoints Bezalel, the great artist, to construct this. And then in the last 2 parshiot of the book, it gets constructed and it gets initiated, and we carry it with us wherever we go. This idea that wherever the Jewish people go in the world, God comes with us, that we're never far away, that God is not a local God. God is a universal God, and the presence, a connection, is always with us. There's always a place where heaven and earth touch, wherever we gather as a community. And that's the language of this week's Torah portion in Truma. And the famous verse, it's the only verse that's not an arcane architectural in detail. The famous verse is 25:8, Exodus 25:8, Asuli Mikdash, V'shachanti betocham. Make for me a mikdash. Make for me a holy place, says God. Asu li, make for me mikdash, a holy place. V'shachanti, says God, I will dwell betocham, among the people. And what's remarkable, of course, is it doesn't say what you think it's going to say. It doesn't say v'shachanti betocho, I will dwell in that place. It says v'shachanti betocham, I will live within you. I will live within the people. And the instructions that follow are very arcane, kind of boring, actually, and difficult to understand, with a lot of words that are hard to translate. And a lot of set of things are hard to imagine how this thing was built. But if you start to imagine how this thing was built, you come to understand, as did the ancient rabbis, that what was given here were a set of instructions that were highly significant because they were highly symbolic. That the creation of a Mishkan, like any piece of art, is actually a projection of something deep within us, a vision of the world, a vision of ourselves. Like any piece of art, it's a reflection back. Any piece of art in a certain way is a mirror that reflects back on the artist and on the community that engages that art. Any piece of art tells us something deep about ourselves. And the Mishkan is that kind of a creation. And so what's important is to read this not just as an ancient text telling us how to build an ancient building. It's not just an ancient set of blueprints. It's actually a very deep reflection on who we are and what we are and who we can be and what we can be. So let's take today one element of that. Let's take the Aron HaKodesh. Now, we use the phrase Aron HaKodesh to mean the ark of a synagogue, but the original meaning of that phrase, the ark or closet or holding place, the holy place of holiness, was this box that Moses creates. If you will remember the Harrison Ford movie, that's what we're talking about, that Aron HaKodesh. And the tradition was that that was the core, that was the center of the Mishkan. That was the holy place where God enters the world. Now, it's not a statue, although it has statuary on it. It's a box, and it's a box with stuff in it, actually. I mean, only Jews would, sanctify a suitcase. And that's what we did here, basically, because it has holes that you can carry on. Sorry?
It's a golden suitcase.
It's a golden suitcase, but for a traveling people to sanctify a suitcase, I think is a tremendous thing to say.
Yeah.
But it says something about us. Mark, you've given a set of sermons about the Klei Kodesh, the holy objects of the Mishkan. So take us through a tour of the Ark of Holiness, this Aron HaKodesh.
Okay, well, first of all, that's a beautiful intro, and it's exactly right. And it's true that the ark is, there's a difference between a sign and a symbol in philosophy. You learn this distinction. A sign is something that holds its meaning in itself, like a stop sign. Stop sign tells you stop. There's nothing beyond it. However, a symbol is a thing in the world that points beyond itself. It doesn't hold the meaning in its own physical essence. It points beyond. So the Mishkan is in general, and the Aron HaKodesh are symbols. They point beyond themselves, and we can tell that by the structure of the Aron HaKodesh itself. First of all, it's wood covered in gold, and there's rings with poles that go through the rings, and that's how they carried it around. And the most distinguishing feature of it, other than that was gold, was the keruvim, these mythical creatures who had 4 faces, and they had wings. One set of wings covered the ark itself, and another covered their eyes, and another went up to God. And the only thing we know about it from Steven Spielberg is if you look at it, your face melts. So we don't know anything more about the keruvim except that that God was seen between their wings. But that was the point, that there's something, and I think if you start with the keruvim, it's saying, look, what's in this box is a bunch of words, among other things that I'll get to. But on top of the box, there's a mystical creature. And I want you to understand that the words are not going to get you 100% of the way to what I have to tell you. Part of what I have to tell you is mysterious. It's about things in the world you couldn't understand if I told you. It's about creatures in the world you've never seen and will never see. It's about creatures in the other world, in the spiritual world that exists, that someday you'll learn about. It's also about the mystery of nature and of the mystery that animal life and the creatures of nature have. So don't think these words are just for humans. This is about how you treat the environment and how you treat the world. That's the keruvim. Inside the box is.
Let me interrupt you for just a moment, if it's okay. So the word in Hebrew, I just want to make sure everyone understands this. The word in Hebrew is, God tells Moshe that on the top of this box, that the Aron HaKodesh, this holy ark, holy box, basically. It's a wooden box faced with gold inside and out, has a golden top. And on top, he's to fashion two kruvim, says the Hebrew. Now, nobody knows what these things look like, which is why the word is translated in your Bible as cherubim. It's cherubim. It's an English word, which is simply a transliteration of the Hebrew phrase kruvim, because nobody knows what they look like. Right. And we can use our imagination. But when they don't even have a word in English for the thing, that tells you that this was, as Rabbi Gellman says, a real mystery. And what he's suggesting is that this idea of a mysterious thing, that's the symbol on top. And the idea is that these two kruvim faced each other, and that in the tiny space between them, that's where God's presence, as it were, rested. In the book of Psalms, God is called Yoshev Kruvim, the one who sits above the kruvim or on the kruvim. Now, an electrical engineer will tell you that if you have gold box and you have two gold objects and they face, there's a spark that goes between them that's called a capacitor. And that's one of the reasons why this thing was dangerous, because it would carry a sort of electrical charge. But I want to just point out one tiny little element of this, which is as much as we can understand. They were to be panim el panim. The kruvim were to face each other. They were to face each other, face to face. And this idea of lifnim or panim el panim, that religion is about facing the other, about looking into somebody's face. And the midrash of looking into someone's face, and what do you learn about a human being by looking into their face? What do you gain from a human being when you look in their face? You gain a sense of, sorry?
I like that. That's beautiful.
It's that the holiness begins when I look into a face and I see the mystery and sanctity there within the face, within the soul. That's the only thing that tells us. The rest of it, we don't know what they look like. We don't know how they were organized. You can see the one that Steven Spielberg imagined in the movie, but that's just someone's speculation. All right, tell us what's in the ark.
But let's just, before we leave them, let's reinforce this point that God is saying, what I am revealing to you, what I'm giving you, you can't understand all of it. Don't beat yourself up. There's some mystery here that is so deep. And of course, the higher mystery is God's self, that we can't understand that. And that's the wonder of it. And we see that also, by the way, Eddie, on the accoutrement, on the vestments of the high priest. All of them are simple things. There's 12 stones for each of the 12 tribes. But in the middle of the stones is another mystery, the Urim and the Tumim. There's a box of, we don't even know what. Some commentators say they were like fortune-telling things. Some say like dice or bones or something to tell that the priest would take out of this little container on the breastplate. So the point is, Judaism is often seen, and particularly our Germanic roots for conservative and Reformed Judaism, everything had to be explained and everything was moral, the moral essence of it. No, there's something deeper and more mysterious here. So now let's go into the box. So inside the box, it's very interesting because most folks who are listening think, oh yeah, it was the 10 Commandments in the box. Yes. The luchot, the tablets that Moses brought down from the mountain were put in the box. Okay. But it's more than that. They weren't the only thing in the box, and that's what most people don't even know. First of all, Moses put the luchot in the box, but that was the second set, of course, everyone knows. He came down, he was angry at the golden calf, and he smashed the first set. So the commentators on a simple phrase like, place the luchot as with the first into the box, as with the first. And so what they say is, what that means is because after all, the luchot, the tablets, had God's writing on them. You can't just leave that in the dirt. So Moses had to pick up every single piece of the broken commandments, so the commentators say, the Shivrei Luchot, and put them in the ark along with the whole tablets. And the phrase was Luchot v'Shivrei Luchot, Shnei Munachim Ba'aron. Both the tablets and the broken tablets were placed together in the ark. So remember, we're talking about a symbol here. So let's just stop with that before we go to the other things in the ark and think about what it is to have an ark with whole and broken inside of it. And from my midrashic point of view, what this is all about is to teach us that this is a symbol of the way we live individually and the way we live together. First of all, together. Luchot v'Shivrei Luchot means, hey, in your community, you're going to have whole tablet people and you're going to have broken tablet people. You're going to have people in your community who are broken. They're broken because of fear. They're broken because of betrayal. They're broken because of abuse. They're broken because of substance abuse. They're broken for 100 reasons, 1,000 reasons, but they're broken people. And I want you to know they're in the ark with you. They're in the community I love with you. They're in the sacred community with you. So don't turn your back on them. Don't believe that the world you live in is only for people who are bright and rich and fine and have no problems at all. Your world is for everyone to be included, the broken and the whole. And secondly, individually, we are ourselves as individuals broken and whole. There's no one who's completely whole. There's no one who doesn't have a broken part or many broken parts. And what God is saying about this, I think, is, I love all your parts. I love your broken parts as much as I love your whole parts. And don't think that your broken parts are an embarrassment to me, and that rabbis make something of this and they say, you know, if you were going to take water, you wouldn't take a broken pot to transport the water because the water would leak out. But God is the healer of broken hearts, and God chooses broken vessels. And for that, we go back to Moses. God could have chosen anyone, and he chose someone who had a ral sfatayim, some kind of birth defect. Maybe it was a cleft palate. We don't know what it was. But he chose a man to be the ultimate Jew, the ultimate leader, who wasn't perfect, who didn't look like the guys who played him on the movies. And that there's broken parts to all of us. And I want to speak personally about this. When I was born with a deformed breastbone. It's called a pectus excavatum, and it was pressing on my heart. And when I was a young adolescent, they had to operate, and the operation back then was very primitive. And they tried to lift it up, and they didn't do that good a job about it. But the result of the operation was I lived from my adolescence to this moment with a scar on my chest. And it was so embarrassing to me that I would shower it. And in the gym class, I would shower in the coach's shower because I didn't want anyone to see my scar. And I was a good athlete back then. And I never learned to play basketball, because in basketball back then, we played shirts and skins. That's how we had the teams. One team was you kept your t-shirt on, the other team you took your t-shirts off. And I would never do that because I didn't want anyone to see my scar. And that scar is the reason I'm a rabbi, and not somebody who gets white-collar criminals out of jail, which is what I was definitely qualified to do, to be some kind of high-profile lawyer. I always felt, because of my scar, a sense of empathy for everyone who had scars, whether they were visible or not. And the scar is the source of everything human and good about me, and not anything to be upset about or embarrassed about. And when I read Luchot v'Shivrei Luchot, I cried. The first time I read it, I cried, because I felt it was all about my chest. So all of us have broken a hole, and that's what's in the ark. Now, in addition to the Luchot v'Shivrei Luchot, two other things are in there that no one ever really talks about, but they were, by commentarial tradition, they were in there. One was the flowering staff of Aaron that flowered with almond blossoms and asserted his rights over all the others who were claiming the rights of the priesthood. And that, I think, is about Aaron and about priests. And we don't give priests any kind of notice much anymore because they're gone, except for Birkat Kohanim and the Pidyon Haben and the first Aliyah and second Aliyah to the Torah in Orthodox synagogues. Well, maybe you do it too, but the thing about priests is God is saying, this whole thing I'm giving you, you can't run it through personal autonomy. What Reform Judaism and Conservative Judaism later will call personal autonomy isn't going to work. You need people who have authority, people who are umpires, people who can say, yes, we'll go to this far, we'll go this far, but we won't go this far. And this is where the boundary is going to be. And our tradition needs that. You need people who are boundary setters and people who can say, Judaism doesn't stand for everything. Judaism doesn't endorse everything. And there are times when a loving no is just as important as a loving yes. And in addition to the flowering staff of Aaron, the final thing in there was a strange thing, a clay jar filled with manna that surprisingly didn't rot. And I think, although I'm less certain about its meaning, I'd love to hear your thoughts. To me, the manna is about the way God nourishes us when we don't think we're going to be nourished. You know, we think we get nourished by going to the store and buying food. All us. I get money. I go to the store. I give them money. I get food. I nourish myself. No, that's how you get carrots and hamburgers or veggie burgers. That's not how you're nurtured by me, God is saying. God is saying, I'm going to feed you. I'm going to feed you words of justice and love, kindness and compassion. And when you feel that you're lost, I'm going to be your rock and your salvation. And that is what I'm going to give you. And that's what I'm going to feed you. And that no one else can feed you and no supermarket can sell to you. And that's my take on the ark.
It's beautiful, Mark. Thank you. And thank you for the personal story. I think, first of all, I want to point out your method, because I think your method is so profound. And I think it invites all of us to read in a very special way. If you listen to what Rabbi Gellman just did, which was so beautiful. So the Torah tells us that there was this ark, which was the center of divinity. The core, this was not the center of divinity, but the place where divinity entered the world, the center of our ritual, and the place where heaven and earth touched. But the ark was a box. It was, I joked before that it was a suitcase. It was a box. It was a vessel for carrying stuff. And the Torah tells us that there were things put in it. And what Rabbi Gellman is asking us to do is to use your imagination and to use your reflection and to ask, what is the symbolic meaning? What is the message of the items that were put there? Now, for just a moment, let's play it upside down. What's not there? There's no weapon there.
Nice.
Because this is not a people that sanctifies conquest, right? You would imagine that a different kind of people would have a battle axe or a sword. I mean, how many nations on their flag or their motto have a sword, right? Because conquest, power, material power, military power is somehow part of their deepest identity.
Beautiful.
Think of the things that are not there. Okay, now think of the things that are there. So we said, number one, the tablets of the Ten Commandments. Number two, the broken tablets. And your statement was made us cry. I mean, it's beautiful. All of us carry brokenness inside. And what this says is that God loves that too. And that's not to be thrown away. You know, relationships that break, dreams that break, aspirations that are never reached, our failures. In some sense, our failures are even more sanctified than our successes. We certainly learn more from them. It's just a beautiful way to think about it. And then these two other things that you mentioned, the flowering rod of Aaron, which you say is associated with authority, which is a beautiful way to think about it. I would go in a different direction. Just using your imagination to say to yourself, so Aaron is the priest. Aaron is the representative of institutional religion. He has a symbol, this rod of institutional religion, and the rod flowers. What's the purpose of institutional religion? It's to bring life. If it has any other purpose, if you use that rod to hit somebody, to poke somebody, that's not what the rod's for. It's to bring life. To
exclude someone.
To exclude, exactly. See, now you start to use your imagination.
Yeah, nice.
And the same thing with the jar of manna. Use your imagination. Okay. First of all, what is manna? Manna is food. What do Jews like to do? We like to eat. But that's in a big way. It's not a small thing. The idea is that you're given the gifts of the world to enjoy. Achal tochal, says God to Adam in the Garden of Eden. And that there's enough. To me, the symbol of the manna is there's enough. Dayenu, there's enough. To live with an ethic of scarcity, to live always grasping because someone's going to come and take away what's mine, to build fences and walls and barriers and boundaries in order to protect what's mine from someone who's coming to take it away is no way to live a life. There's enough manna. There's enough. And because if I take a breath and say, my God, I have enough, I can invite you to my table to enjoy. If I take a breath and say there's enough, I can welcome the stranger to my table to enjoy. If I say there's enough, then I breathe well in the world and I can enjoy the gifts of life. It's a whole different attitude of life. That to me is what but I want everyone who listens to this, here are the symbols, right? The whole tablets, the broken tablets, the flowering rod, the jar of manna, tell me what they mean. Tell me this is a language of symbols and no one has the key. No one knows how, but you get to make up what this means and what do these things suggest to us. That's such a and then what's not there and what does the absence of these things suggest to us? And that's a beautiful midrash on this one.
I love what you did. I love what you did. That's really nice. What's not there? That's
well, because these are the symbols of us. These are the things we associate. When I was a kid, my brother and I shared a room, and each of us had a drawer that we called our treasure drawer. It was a drawer where nobody was allowed to go into that drawer. So it was you put all of your secret treasures. You know, I had a wallet that I got as a Hanukkah present. It went in my treasure drawer. I had a letter that told me I got a good grade in the class. I put it in my treasure drawer. The Ark of the Covenant was the symbol of divinity in the world, and it's where we kept the things that were most precious to us and most representative of us. And the question is, what's there and what should be there and what's not there? What's in your treasure drawer? What's in your Ark of the Covenant? That's a beautiful question to ask as we read this Torah portion this morning. Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you. So let me take a moment of personal privilege, if it's okay.
Yes, do it.
Yes, on Thursday night, I became a grandfather.
Yay!
It's a big deal. It's my daughter Nessa, thank God, is well. The baby is healthy and well, and we look forward to celebrating and naming around Pesach time when they come out here to visit. So when we talk about the kruvim on top of the ark, and you talk about the mystery that goes with that, that there are certain things in life which remind you that you are not in control of the world, and there's so much more going on than you can possibly imagine. And there are really no words to describe this. I can tell you that the last 24 hours have been precisely that for Nina and for me, as we become Saba and Safta, or Grandma and Grandpa, or Mama and Papa, whatever the baby decides to ultimately call us. So we're really very excited to celebrate. And when God says, Asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham, you make for me a holy place, I will dwell there among you. This week, I can honestly say that I feel that very personally. So I wish everyone a very good Shabbos. Mark, thank you for learning with us. Following this broadcast, of course, there's Torah, there's davening from Valley Beth Shalom, and we welcome everyone. On Wednesday night, we have this wonderful series, this wonderful lecture last week. We're talking about Israeli culture, Israel beyond its politics. And I really recommend you come and join us. 7 o'clock. We're doing it on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube, so you can watch us from wherever you are. And our guest is Sagi Rafael, who's a marvelous teacher of Israeli art, a scholar, a curator, gallery owner of Israeli art. And he's opened our eyes to such a marvelous development, the revolutions in Israeli art that tell us so much about the revolutions of Israeli identity. So for those of us who love Israel, but live in America and elsewhere, this is a chance to really peek into a unique civilization that's created in the Middle East by Jews and people and Arabs and others from all over the world. Join us on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock for the College of Jewish Studies. Mark, good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, my friend, and Mazel Tov to you and Nina, and to the kids, and pray for a healing for the mother, and may your granddaughter live to see the children of her children's children.
Urevanim livanecha shalom al Yisrael. May she grow up well and take over this broadcast from you and me.
Any day, any day.